Good day, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Vise Squad, brought to you by the Anadromous Fly Company. My name is Ryan. I'm your Wednesday host. Before we get started, we're going to switch things up a little bit here. My opener is changing, and forgive me if I bumble this, but if you guys are interested, please head over to fishingandoutdoors.ca for our Canadian friends and .net for our American friends, and you're able to actually see all the tools and products that our sponsor, the Anadromous Fly Company, carries, amongst other sorts of other stuff that is on the stores. Go check it out. They've got all sorts of cool stuff on there. At any rate, this week, in carrying on with our Batman theme, we decided to do Mr. Freeze, and this is what I came up with for Mr. Freeze, and I'm going to call this the Frosty Minnow. So sort of a minnow pattern, if you will. I guess that's what I would fish it as a minnow pattern. But we got some flash in there, and he was all gray. His spacesuit was kind of gray. The original actor, he had some crazy orange eyebrows, so we put a bit of an orange hot spot in there behind his collar because he had a ring around his neck. As he was Mr. Freeze, he had this ring thing around his neck. So we'll get into it here. In the vise, we're going to put this as a size 10 4 extra long streamer hook and a 532 bright silver brass bead. For the bulk of the fly, we're going to use some white 70 denier UTC, which we'll start behind the bead here. I'll get rid of our tag. And we're going to run that all the way down to the bend. For the tail, I'm going to use two. This is sort of a medium or dark gray saddle hackle feather. And all I've done is I found two that more or less are about the same size and shape. And I'm going to tie them in so that they're curving opposite each other, so they'll splay apart like that. So I am going to tie them in one at a time just because it makes it a little bit easier. What I've done ahead of time, I should say, is when I'm prepping this, I've stripped all the chaff and all the fluffy bits off the back end. And I've taken my scissors, and this part of my scissors here, the flat bit, and I put that in there, and I sort of mash that feather stem down, and it will make it flat, and it makes it just a little bit easier to tie in against the side of the hook shank. And it'll get it to, it won't roll around as bad. It still might roll on you, but it won't be as bad as if it is if you haven't squished it down. So we'll tie that one in. And we'll do the same to the next one. And we'll tie it in on the opposite side. Let's wind my thread back here first. Like so. I just want to make sure that's tied in really well, and I'll snip out the back end of that stem. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with that. Next we'll wind our thread back down to the hook, and I'm going to grab some silver flash. I've got 6 or 7 pieces of it here. And we'll tie it in so it's just a little bit shorter than those tail feathers. Oh, I had one drop out there. That's okay. And we'll put a couple light turns on that, and I'll get it all down the side of the hook like I want it to. We'll have a tendency to roll around on you a little. So we'll have that tied in down the side. And we'll just work our way forward. Just a few wraps. And I grab the flash that's leading forward. And I'm going to roll it over the hook and grab it with the thread. Oops. Let's try that again. And then we'll pull it straight back and leave it tied in down that side of the hook. And then what we'll do, we'll grab our scissors and we'll just kind of snip it off to length. And there's our tail with flash in it. We'll clean that up just a little bit. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a dubbing loop. So I'll pull my thread out maybe 4 or 5 inches. And I'm going to tie it back onto itself, like so. And then I'm going to advance my thread forward to the bead. I am going to put a whip finish knot in that, but first what I'm going to do is grab my dubbing spinner. And I like to just hang it off that loop, and it just sort of, then it doesn't all coil back up, and it makes it a little easier to, oopsies, find it again. Yard sale going on here today. So I'll just put a couple turns into that dubbing loop and set my thread aside. Next, we'll grab some dubbing wax. Don't need it, but it is definitely makes it a little bit easier to get that dubbing to stay in there. So just put a little bit of wax on that thread. And for the dubbing, we're going to use some, this is Senyo's laser dub in silver minnow belly. Pretty flashy, and it's got nice long fibers on it. So we'll just grab a bit of a pinch of it here. And just slide it in between that dubbing loop. You could dub this on. It wouldn't be any different, really. I just like this because it's a little easier to get those fibers all teased out of it and towards the back. Maybe grab one more pinch there. So that is about 3 inches long, which should be enough. Then we'll start spinning it clockwise. And once we've got it nice and tight, you'll see that the noodle is all sort of bound up on itself. So what we'll do is, I do have a comb here somewhere. I'll just take a comb and sort of tease some of those fibers out of that loop. Just gently. And then I'm just going to start wrapping that forward. Trying not to trap too many. We'll be able to pick them out after as well. Dubbing loops are not my strong suit, but in the end we can tease all those dubbing fibers out. We'll work our way forward. We'll grab our thread, tie that loop off. A few good turns, and I'll snip the remainder of it out. And then I'll grab that brush again. Let's try this guy. This one's not as aggressive as the other one. Once you're happy with how much or how little dubbing you want out, I'm pretty happy with that. It looks pretty good. Just kind of bring it all to the back. Get it over top of the tails of it. There. Alright, now for the collar, I've taken a hackle fiber, or hackle feather rather, off of, this is a medium done grizzly hackle. So this is off sort of the back end of the hackle. And they're pretty big feathers rather, fibers. I got fibers stuck in my head. And they're not really good for much other than streamers. They're not really suited for a dry fly, so this is a good opportunity to sort of use them up. But what we'll do is we'll tie it in at the butt of the feather. I'm just gonna make a few advancing turns with it and just create a bit of a hackle collar. So that was 3 turns. Put a few wraps in there to trap it. Snip the rest of that feather out. And then I'll just make some nice turns back over it to get it to lay flat. Not lay flat necessarily, but at least point backwards. Alright, next we'll grab our whip finish tool. Tie that white thread off. Like that. Next we're going to grab another bobbin that's got, I've got some burnt orange UTC and 70 denier loaded up in this one, and this is what we'll use to make our hot spot collar. We'll get that started. And then just wrap until you're happy with the collar. Which I think is about all it needs there. And then we'll grab our whip finish tool again. Double whip that too. I think so. Definitely add a drop of head cement for the sake of the video. I'm not going to bother, but or some bone dry is nice. Really locks those thread wraps in there. So that's my take on Mr. Freeze at any rate. The Frosty Minnow. I think it's actually going to be a pretty productive pattern. I'm thinking of tying myself some in as a balance style, and I think those would be good through the ice too, which is always a good time fishing flies through the ice. At any rate, folks, if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed the video, and hit the bell beside it. You won't miss any of our upcoming content, which there's always a ton of. Rick is a busy guy, editing and posting and doing all sorts of videos for us, and doing a heck of a good job at it. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you want to hit fishingandoutdoors.ca for Canadian customers and .net for our American friends, you can see all of our sponsors, which is the Anadromous Fly Company's tools and gear, which is some pretty fantastic stuff, and I sure enjoy using it myself. I tie with it every day. But at any rate, folks, until next week, I'm hoping in the mail we get some beads, but we'll see what happens. I've got a really good idea for the penguin, and if not, I think I've got Catwoman dialed in too, which was a fun one to kind of figure out. So, but we'll see what happens next week. At any rate, take care. Thanks.